Thank you, everyone, for joining us today for this TL Insider Fireside Chat with Dr. NavNirat Nibber, ND, to discuss wellness, supplements, and how to improve overall wellness in your daily life. Dr. NavNirat Nibber, ND, is a graduate of the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine and a registered naturopathic doctor and recipient of the 2015 Naturopathic Honor Award. In addition to her clinical and consulting work, Dr. Nibber is a senior medical advisor, brand educator, and research liaison for advanced orthomolecular research, engaging with international research in the naturopathic field. She is a published health expert in over 25 international publications, and her focus is on providing equitable and accessible health insights to build empowered communities. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jason.
So my first question is a really easy one. It is, how are you? And what are your holiday plans?
I love that you say it's an easy question. And these days, sometimes you ask, you're like, oh, I don't know. I'm doing very well, thank you. I think it's been such an interesting period. I think for a lot of people coming out of these 2 years, we're still processing 2019, and someone's like, it's almost 2023. But yeah, it's a really exciting time. I'm looking forward to going to Switzerland to see some family for Christmas and just enjoying the season.
So we touched upon it in the bio, but tell us about your career. What brought you to AOR?
Yeah, I am a naturopathic doctor by training, and before that, I did my biology, my biosci degree from University of Victoria, and a lot of this continuing education was informed by my relationship with AOR. So Advanced Orthomolecular Research, for those who don't know, is a Canadian company based out of Calgary, and it is a family owned and operated company. So my family, my uncle is actually the one that started the company. And from a very young age, I had this relationship and understanding and awareness of supplementation and what the opportunity is for supplementation. And I remember it going from very much a cottage industry within the house to now this large scale pharmaceutical facility, and seeing that growth and being part of it in multiple stages. I started in shipping and went to customer service and then marketing. So I pretty much worked at every department in this company in some capacity, whether I was 12 or now. And it drove, what I chose to study as an adult. And it led me down this career path into alternative medicine. And ultimately now I get to contribute in a really, hopefully meaningful way to how the company develops.
Wow. And I love that it was like you were growing up with the company and sort of seeing the development. And I love that you worked in every department. I think there's one way to really understand a place. It's to have every single role. So my next question is about the wellness space. It is really crowded. It is really competitive. And there's like a lot of celebrities and influencers launching their own brands in the past few years. How does your organization, how does AOR stand out?
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. We're at an interesting inflection point within the wellness space because lots of people are seeing the benefits, so they're entering in. Where I think we stand out is the fact that we were participating and growing the industry 30 plus years ago. So at an infancy, at a point where people weren't engaging in the research, where there wasn't as much accessibility to information about what nutraceuticals can do for you, about how to properly use them, about how to properly manufacture them. So where I take a lot of pride in this company is the fact that we're able to manufacture ourselves. So we're very intimately acquainted with what it actually takes to make a quality formulation. And then behind us is a team of scientists and researchers and clinicians who understand the physiology of making a product work. So there is a degree of credibility and relevance and deep understanding as to how to make a formulation actually work with the body, and an avoidance that's helped us avoid a lot of the pitfalls of getting into trendy things that maybe aren't efficacious, because we know that at the end of the day, there needs to be some sort of scientific validation to what we're producing.
Well, I mean, and I love what you said there about just being in this sector for 30 years from the very beginning to now and watching it evolve. But
Yeah.
that takes me to my next question, which is speaking of celebrity wellness brands, like what are your thoughts on those? Like, should celebrities be launching their own wellness companies?
Yeah, this is an important conversation to have, not because I think that, we're better than any celebrity and we can do it better. I think I don't want to gatekeep supplementation. Supplementation should be accessible for people. It should be available. And if celebrity voices are able to do that and amplify that, that's great. Where I really hope that the industry standard rises to is ensuring that it's not necessarily about the face as a product, it's about the quality of the product itself. So if they are able to properly design a formulation with a team of people who understand the physiology and understand that scientific process, if they're able to manufacture with high quality standards, then obviously there's no problem with that. My concern becomes when those quality parameters aren't being met and a name is being attached to any sort of commodity product.
And that actually is a perfect bridge into my next question. And this was like one of the questions that my wife was really interested in me asking, which was, how can you trust a supplement? Like, how do you know if a supplement is high quality? What types of ingredients should you look for? And what types of ingredients should you stay away from?
I love that your wife wanted to know that, because I do think that the market is very crowded. There's a lot of variability and it can be very overwhelming. I mean, for my patients who come to see me, they feel overwhelmed. They want that guidance. Yeah. And the simple answer is to ask questions as you're doing. So what quality means is an overseeing of the process. So that happens on multiple stages. So in Canada, we're very lucky that we have a regulatory body with Health Canada that will oversee and ensure that any product that comes to market meets some sort of standard. So not every country has that. So there's that built-in layer. The second layer actually comes from within the company and the industry itself, and that is ensuring that when you're designing a supplement, that it is manufactured in a facility that does third-party testing, that will blend and mix ingredients and then do the testing to ensure that what they say and how much of what they say is in the product itself. So for example, vitamin D over time, you want to make sure that it's the same when it leaves this facility to when it hits the shelves. And then when you take it, you want to make sure that it's the correct identity and the correct potency. I think the best way to do that is to have third-party testing. And what that means is just another lab has come in and done those tests and verified for us, so that no company is able to bias any of those answers. So third-party verification is very important. Having that control of our manufacturing processes in-house is very helpful for us. We own our manufacturing facility. We're not contracting it out. So in so doing, we can make sure that there is no toxicity concerns, that there's no contamination concerns, and that we can use innovation within the manufacturing process. So that can look like, making sure that we're using the right blended materials, especially with botanical medicines. This can be a little bit difficult. Just making sure that there's no heavy metal toxicity within, if you're getting green tea, for example. So that's a very long-winded answer, but when it comes down to it, asking if there's any certified manufacturing processes for the facility that it's made in, asking if they've done third-party manufacturing, and then requesting additional information from the the company itself. So making sure that there's a lot of transparency in what's being put into the product. Non-medicinal ingredients is always a point of contention because a lot of people want to know, what's not just the main ingredients, but what other additives are being added to the products. And again, I think there's a lot of variability in different markets. So in Europe, certain things are very restrictive, and we do try to follow some of those more stringent manufacturing practices. So we're not using a lot of things like magnesium stearate or a lot of these additional emulsifiers or red dye, or just any of those dyes to change the color or taste of the product. We're trying to use as natural ingredients as possible, and then increase that transparency by telling you not just what we're putting in the product, but what a raw material supplier that's, for example, is sending us the green tea, what have they put in? Because you still might be getting some of that.
I love it. So it's almost like there's a full supply chain kind of verification all the way through. And you touched upon it there, like the types of ingredients you should stay away from. So it sounds like dyes, and like what else should we stay away from? Because that is really true. Whenever I do look at labels and I do see the non-medicinal, I'm like, oh, what is this stuff? So I guess like what else should we keep an eye out when we're looking at it?
Yeah. So again, I think this obviously is very dynamic in terms of what we don't know yet. So we're still learning and adding in. I would never say any one ingredient is like the worst thing in the world, but avoiding, certain dyes that can, bioaccumulate and cause some toxicity. Avoiding if it's just such a huge long list of non-medicinal ingredients, I think the question is, why are these necessary? But yeah, it's I'm hesitant to just say, one ingredient, because we don't necessarily know how much is in there. And what I'm seeing a trend in is a lot of influencers online are sticking to like, okay, nobody have this ever. And in certain cases, it's not an issue. So I'm just trying to think of a good example where that came up recently, but this moralizing of ingredients or this like condemning, I think can cause a lot of fear for people, and then they don't take it at all, and they may be losing the benefits of getting enough iron. And it's worse to not have the iron than to have a little bit of this very specific ingredient. So we can always, as consumers, ask for more transparency and ask for clarity on why these non-medicinal ingredients are in there, and ask for less, because from a manufacturing perspective, some things need to be in there. They help the flow of the powder, they help things blend better, but you don't need a lot of them. And dyes are a good example of that. We don't need everything to be a perfect color in every tablet. It's okay if there's a little bit of variation at the expense or at the benefit of removing this dye. Right.
That's and even the way you sort of position that, like accumulating, like that's something that you should like. Yeah, that would be a question that I would ask. Like, would this be something that could accumulate in my body? And that would be probably pretty negative. But so my next question is about the holiday season. We talked about it. You're going to be traveling, but the holiday season is coming up. Personal care, wellness, it's top of mind for everyone. And it's going to be, for lots of people, it's going to be a very, very stressful time. So how can one begin a wellness journey? And what are 3 things that we should do right away?
Yes, I would say you're right. I mean, travel right now, especially at any point, is stressful. Just waiting in those lines. And I think we do put a lot of pressure as a culture in general on this time of year. There's a lot going on. You're seeing family, but it's also, it can be a really rejuvenative time, and it can be a time to take stock of what you want for the next year. So when we talk about wellness, I hope that the conversation starts becoming about individuals defining what their own wellness means, and not looking so much to be influenced by someone else's version of wellness. So the first thing to do is identify what your end goals are. What does it look like for you to live a healthy and well life? Does that mean a better work-life balance? Does that mean more sleep or more opportunities and time with your family? And then once you've identified that and determined that, you can also then take stock of where you currently are in terms of your stress management, in terms of your sleep, and in terms of your physical and mental health. When you're taking stock of where you currently are, that can look like doing assessments with healthcare providers, getting blood tests done. And I really support people advocating for testing, advocating with their healthcare provider for additional insights into understanding the root cause of issues. So if you're constantly fatigued, now is a good time to go and ask your doctor for, get a full test done, get your iron levels checked, get your B12 levels checked. Vitamin D is something that, before we start supplementing, maybe we want to start checking. So once you've done an assessment of where your baseline is, then you can make decisions on appropriate supplementation or appropriate therapies, if you're doing IV nutrient therapy or taking oral supplements or starting a new treatment, then at least you understand where your baseline is.
Right.
So the 3 steps, like I said earlier, is understand where you want to go, know where you're at currently, and then start to develop a program that addresses each of those spaces. So for me, that looks like having a healthy understanding of, if I'm going to introduce a supplement, not the best at taking them all the time, is making sure that it's a manageable number of capsules per day, that I'm incorporating it into my routine, and that I know what metrics I'm looking for it to work. So like, when should I reassess this? When should I stop taking it, or when should I add something else on?
Wow. I mean, there's like a common through line of being curious and asking questions and taking control of your wellness in terms of, where you're at, where do you need to get at? Like that is a really good starting point. And I think that is something that I want to do that. So I've decided I want to do that.
Good.
I do want to incorporate more supplements into my life, into my regime. But if I start, like, what kind of improvement can one see if they start incorporating supplements into their daily regimen?
Yes, this is a difficult question simply because it requires an individualized approach. Supplementation is such a powerful tool, but it is one of many tools. It needs to be incorporated into a holistic perspective. So what else are you doing in your lifestyle? Because it's not the silver bullet approach that I think we've been conditioned to rely on when we're talking about taking anything, right? So where it provides the best support is, again, when you understand your baseline, then you can identify, okay, if I need iron because I'm quite low, my ferritin is low, I should reassess this at 3 to 4 months. That's going to change depending on every nutrient and depending on how low you are. For example, vitamin D is often recommended to be taken throughout the winter months as we have shorter days, less sunlight exposure. But the risk is, you don't want to take so much that you get into a toxic state. So when someone's identifying how long and what supplements they need to be taking, having a baseline is great. You don't always get blood tests for everything. So really being mindful of your symptoms. Why did you start taking it? And I liken this to slower medicine, right? We're taking our time with rebuilding either blood levels of things or readjusting and getting back to a homeostasis or an equilibrium, if you will. So this can take some time. So with a lot of these stress management supplements, I say, you give it 2 weeks at least before you start tracking those changes. Now, this is a very generalized rule. But then if it's specific nutrients, that will depend nutrient to nutrient, but you should be retesting within 3 months to see, have things gone up, down, and then you can make adjustments either to the dosage or to how it's being taken. So is it a powder form or a soft gel? And then you can maybe make that adjustment if you need more or less. But checking in at regular intervals is helpful if you've done an assessment of what your baseline is. So then that can even be just writing down your symptoms on a scale of 1 to 5. And then in 3 months assessing, did that change at all? Did it move the needle? And then looking at what other lifestyle factors that you might need to also incorporate.
So, I mean, you touched upon it in your answer, which was this, it's like, a supplement is not a magic bullet. So that takes me to my next question, which is, what are some myths? So I probably assumed it is a magic bullet. So what are some myths about supplements that you'd like to clear up?
So I think what I've said is one side of it. It's that taking a supplement isn't necessarily always going to correct everything. They are supplemental. They are meant to be a crutch for a period of time. They're meant to support you and prop you up until you get back to that equilibrium. Because when you take them, the idea is either you're taking it because you're out of balance and it's to get you back up, or you anticipate in the future, you're thinking ahead and you're saying, from a preventative perspective, I know this runs in my family. I want to avoid that. So I'm going to start taking this now, these bone building supplements now. So for the former, for where you're out of balance and you want to get back in, I guess the concern with supplementation is that it will be the one and only thing to bring me back. But unless you've removed the thing that got you out of balance, you're going to continuously be running or treading upstream. Is that the phrase? You're kind of going against the current. So removing that is going to make supplementation that much more effective, and you'll see the results much quicker. So a myth I think that exists is that supplementation is the only thing that can be done. The other myth is that on the other side of the coin is that it's not effective at all. And that's simply not true. I think that we've seen over and over is that supplementation is very beneficial for individuals who have nutrient imbalances, maybe from a particular diet, that a lot of these botanical medicines have been used for centuries in a lot of traditional medicine systems, and they just weren't given the, I guess, opportunity to be studied in the same way that a lot of pharmaceuticals were. So we don't want to miss out on that huge therapeutic potential, because of these like different political systems that just didn't allow us to study these things. So there's huge potential and there's huge therapeutic value to these things, and taking them, I think, when taken appropriately, can really improve people's state of being, their health and wellness. So yeah, that I guess it's a myth that all these don't work, so it doesn't really matter. And sometimes individuals who have that concept in their mind, like, oh, this doesn't really work, so it doesn't matter, also incorrectly place on it that they're all just safe and I can take as much or as little as I want. Yeah. And safety is an interesting thing. These are regulated by Health Canada, so there is a level of control to the market, but we're not at the same level as pharmaceutical drugs, so there is some disparity. And so you do want to make sure that you can trust who is providing you with those supplements, and that they are, providing you with what is being said, that they're giving you. So, safety can come from the manufacturer. It can also come from too much of any good thing is no longer a good thing. I mentioned this about the vitamin D. Taking too much vitamin D can cause vitamin D toxicity. And we're seeing that with people who are just taking, they're not supplementing in a thoughtful way. They're just taking it because they thought that's what they're supposed to do, but they're not reassessing and checking back in and then realizing, actually, like, I'm getting lots of headaches. Wow. I think also the accessibility of supplements is is nice because, you know, people can access them without having a prescription, but it also means that there's a lot of onus on the individual to make sure that it's right for them. And, you know, sometimes a supplement, it can't, we want it for the side effects, for the beneficial side effects, but it can cause, you know, certain things can cause different side effects. So checking in when you're taking it, stopping if you feel like it's not right or making things worse. And then again, I would always recommend consulting with your healthcare provider before you start taking it. But, you know, even after, and the nice thing is a lot of times you can stop taking it and hopefully any negative symptoms should go away. But
Yeah. I mean, again, that continuation of the through line, like in your answer was this idea of being intentional. Like you have to really be intentional about sort of your journey through this and really understanding sort of the pros and cons, but just like understanding, like really being intentional with your understanding in terms of what you need. You know, we talked about, you know, sort of the evolution of your career and all the different things that you've done to get to where you are. So if for the people who are going to be watching this later, like what is a piece of advice that you would give to a young person who's entering the healthcare and wellness space?
this is, well, I feel like I'm continuously learning and picking up. I think in the same vein of you know, an individual with their health being curious, I think curiosity in within your career and within healthcare spaces is really required because it allows you to ensure that you're hearing the people who are coming to you for help. And so staying curious without having any biases or judgments towards what the individual is facing allows you to make much more informed decisions about their health. And having gone through a journey of owning a clinic myself and that process, I think a very important lesson I learned was to recognize where there's strengths for myself and recognize where I aspire to develop skills or strengths, and then seeking them, because there's a lot of information available. There's a lot of people who are willing to share their information. We're in an information almost overload sometimes period. But your simple curiosity will drive that. And I think, yeah, let's just be more curious and and ask questions, and then not just ask the questions, but when you're given an answer, try to really listen so you hear what the person is saying. And if you don't have that clarity, asking for more. There's lots of debate in the healthcare space, and you can really find people so passionate on every side of the spectrum of things. And at its core, if we're just listening to conversations that are happening, listening to our patients in front of us, we're able to make better clinical judgments. And then we can't be the master of everything. So understanding and finding your niche and your area that you really want to be known for and known you want to know, starts with that seed of curiosity. So explore things that you're actually interested in.
Wow. So that's like that in terms of just amazing general advice for life. Like be very curious, listen, find what you're good at, and go for it. Like I love that. That is a I wrote it all down. I wrote all that stuff down. So my next question is, you know, it's about, you know, obviously like you've been very intentional in the building of your career. So what role has mentorship played in your career, and who are your mentors now?
You know, I appreciate and I'm surprised at you saying, you know, I've been intentional in my career, because it hasn't always felt that way. It's often felt like life hands you opportunities or brings, for me, people into my life that guided and directed me at just the right times. Sometimes even books. Have you ever read a book where you're like, oh, this came at exactly when I needed to read it?
Yes.
Or you listen to a podcast. So it's almost like a cosmic timing thing. And you're like, wow, okay, I'm going to pay attention there. I have been so fortunate to have mentorship within a family business. You know, I'm at the top of this discussion. I mentioned this is a family company, and that can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. To me, it has always meant that in the work you do, you infuse it with your core values. And having my uncle as a mentor who started this company, and again, you see on one hand the work ethic that goes into building a company. You see what it actually takes, those struggles, and how it wasn't singularly him. It was this, you know, my aunt just grew this company right alongside my uncle, and that quiet strength and dignity that they did it with, as new immigrants from England. It's very inspiring.
Mm.
And then from the technical aspect of it, seeing how my uncle in particular formulates and comes to decisions on, you know, there is therapeutic potential. We did miss this opportunity to study a lot of these things. How do I bring this to new markets? So his passion is something I think that's quite infectious. It's quite inspiring, and from a mentorship perspective, I really can't ask for anyone, um, you know, anyone better. And then there have even been, this company did not grow to where it is today without some really brilliant minds. And we had, many years ago, we had a GM. His name was Clark Sayer, and this brilliant person who had just, speaking of curiosity, he had like 5 degrees in various things. You know, he had an engineering degree and a
Wow.
biochemistry degree. Like it just shows that when one is curious and when one wants to learn, you will find a way, and you don't need to be pigeonholed by anything. So that was, he was such a inspiring individual who was, he had such a dry wit about him. And I think bringing that humor to his work is something that I've always loved to do, because it's too short, life is too complicated to be miserable at the work you're doing. So you should take time to enjoy these things. And yeah, I've been very fortunate. I've had some really great mentors, and within the naturopathic ND community in Canada, I think we're a small but fearsome group, and there's a lot of voices that stand to support each other and stand to grow the industry in its entirety, because we all value that legitimacy and that opportunity to really impact people's lives in a very holistic way. So yeah, there's been quite a lot. And I think, if with most people, when you take stock of where you are in your life and how people help get you there, you realize we really, you know, we stand on the shoulders of giants. Like there's so many people who have come before us that have done seemingly much greater things, and hopefully we then can pass that down on to next generations.
And I love that, this idea of like, there's even describing like all of that, there's this building of this sector that you are a part of, and that's some great business advice. And now towards the end of this our chat, like what's some good life advice that you can give? Like what are some of your favorite daily health habits?
Oh my gosh. My daily health habits, I have I have given myself so much more grace. I think when you're in
Mm,
the wellness space, with particularly with influencer culture, there is this idea or concept that you yourself have to be a perfect emblem of like a healthy lifestyle. So, and that's why I think I was emphasizing this concept of define your own wellness, define what that means for yourself, because yeah, there can be this, you know, imposter syndrome, or there's keeping up with the Jones attitude or mentality with your own health. And ultimately, for me, I found just protecting my peace, being very boundaried with people, knowing, I think maybe with age that comes, you know who you are. So when you develop your health routines, when I've developed my health routines, it's about checking in. Again, this is a theme, checking in with what I need for that day, what is going to serve me best. And that's very simple things like hydration. I'm in Calgary, and it's very dry here. So just being aware of like, drink water. I'm
Yeah.
basically a houseplant. Like, I need more water. Um, and then being consistent with that, like taking a simple health solution and then being consistent with it, to me is much more important than getting into, all this biohacking and changing everything about my genetic predispositions. I mean, that's all good and well, but if it's just about getting those basics right and protecting my peace, sleeping regularly, love a good regular 8 hour sleep cycle. It's so, again, it's sometimes in the simplicity. It's like we can easily complicate things for ourselves, and I'm protecting my peace and doing what nourishes and feeds my soul, and then everything else is just over there.
See, that is, it's so funny because it was like they said, those simple things and just do them over and over again, like drinking water. It's so funny how reinforcing they are too. Like sometimes I'll have 2 nights in a row of great sleep. I look completely different. I'm like a different human being. It's
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
So
And do you ever find like, do you have like your little nighttime rituals or daily rituals that you just have to do? And when you do them, there's this sense of like, thanks me. Thank you for doing. Like I said, I have this little, I got a pretty pill case because I was like, I just want beautiful things around me. So I got a really pretty pill case. And every night I'll take out my pills for the next day and I'll just put them in. And then I'll have my like nice water and I got a nice little carafe. And then I'll hydrate and then I'll take my pills. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. That was my little gift to myself.
and that is it. Like there's something really sort of centering about those rituals that we have, and yeah, again, that reinforcing the energy. It is very, very true. Like um it's funny, like I mean, I'm having a glass of water right now. It's like my first water of the day. As I'm drinking it, I'm changing. I do feel like I'm much better. But this takes me to my last question, which is what is next for you, and what is next for AOR in 2023?
Yeah, so hopefully, the as a 30-year company, there's always this excitement because that there's something big next. So from the company perspective, it's about growing into different markets, and I think about accessibility. The world is changing, and it's there's a lot of financial burdens on people, so it's about you know increasing that accessibility and that point of accessing supplementations so that it's not um, so kept within one specific group of people, that everyone can access high quality supplements, because I think everyone deserves that. Um, and so with that, AOR has launched a brand called WHOLISTIC by AOR, and this is a premium accessible brand, but it's much more accessible. So these are very simple foundational formulations that are coming. So we're very excited about that. And as a company, we've been kind of looking towards continuous innovation, and continuous innovation to me means find new solutions, access, the therapeutic tools that have been used for centuries, and how to bring them into this market, and how to get the best therapeutic benefit from these things. So always looking to new formulations, new ingredients, working with new suppliers, and the research that needs to be done for these things before we feel comfortable bringing them to the market. Participating in research is really important for industry leaders such as AOR. So we partner with a lot of universities, and that academic side is really invigorating to me. So this ties in with my own personal goals and development. It's to continue the research and continue making these tools accessible to the people who need them.
It's amazing.
Mm.
Well, thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for joining us today. It was, it just all the different things that we took away, whether it be just the intentionality, the curiosity, the listening, And also just there's a lot of, yeah, taking control of your wellness and sort of going on that journey, I think has been super, super valuable. So thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Nibber.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for asking such insightful questions. It's a challenging world, and I think this is important to have these discussions so that people can find their voice and make decisions about their health that make sense for them. So I appreciate your questions and your time in this platform.
Thank you.